Welcome back. In this lesson, we will talk about the height and width of elements. Let's say we have a div element with some text. Its background color is blue. We can see the blue div element on the page. It occupies almost the entire width of the window. The height, on the other hand, depends on the content of the element. For example, if there is a lot of text inside the div, then the height adjusts automatically. Same thing happens if I remove the text. This will make the div invisible. No text content means no height is necessary. But how can we define the size of this div? Let's start with the width. To set the width of an element, we use the width property. Then we assign a numerical value to it. For example, 400. After that, we need to define a unit. In this case, we use px, which stands for pixels. So the div is 400 pixels wide. There are a lot of different units in CSS. We can do the same thing for the height by using the height property. Let's assign 400 pixels as well. Now we should be able to see a square on the page, as both dimensions are 400 pixels. We can change the size of the element as we like by simply assigning different numbers for the height and width. But remember to include the ending px. If we only specify a number, it won't work. If the element gets too big, it will overflow the edges of the body and a scroll bar will appear. But what if I want to adjust the size of the element relative to the size of the window? For example, I want the width of the element to always be exactly half the size of the browser window. In that case, I would need a different unit than pixels. A unit that we will very often use is percentages. This unit is used to define a size relative to the element's parent object. In this case, the parent of the div is the body. So if we set the width to 50%, the div will occupy half of the body's width. This becomes especially important when we talk about responsive web design later in the course. Let's see what happens if I set the height to 50%. Somehow this doesn't change anything. That's because the body does not have a specific height. Remember, percentage sets the height relative to the parent element. When the parent element does not have a height, then the percentage does not work. If I set the div to 50% of the body's height, CSS does not know what I want. But if I specify a height for the body, for instance 500 pixels, then the height of the div changes. Now it has a height of 250 pixels, which is 50% of 500. So now that you have learned a little bit more about height and width, it's time to apply that knowledge in practice. I want you to implement this little project. In this example, we see two div elements nested inside each other, a green div and a blue div. If the width of the window changes, the green element adapts dynamically, whereas the blue element remains unchanged. The green element should cover half of the size of the body, while the blue div should be half the height of the green div. Now it's your turn to try to achieve the same thing. Pause the video and try it out yourself. I will show you the solution in a few seconds. So, I hope you tried it. The solution is actually quite simple. We have two div elements inside each other. They have the class parentDiv and childDiv. We select both elements in CSS using the class selector. The parentDiv is green. It should have a width of 50% and a height of 200 pixels. Of course, it's possible that you have different values. The child element is blue and has a fixed width of 150 pixels and a height of 50%. If you manage to do that, great job. If not, that's no problem. We'll get there soon enough. Your values don't have to be exactly the same as mine, but I hope you understood the difference between percentage values and pixel values. Pixels will always remain the same, whereas percentages are always relative to the parent element. Welcome back.